Brands always talk about what got them their first big win. No one talks about what's kept them there or what helps them grow from there. It's like everyone's just looking for their first springboard. I feel like no one talks about what needs to happen from there and the scrappiness of sustaining your first win. Influencers and like this swarm only got us so far. And of course, like duplicating across other silos was important, but then like the messaging evolution. Iteration on initial messaging is something that I don't see a lot of brands nailing home, and we're still learning about it too. But now we're like evolving our messaging into like impact and practicality and innovation rather than just like virality that got us here.
Drew Arciuolo, VKTRY Gear. We met in, get my mic right up here. We met in 2022 at C-Suite Mastermind. You came out from Connecticut, right? Where you are?
Yeah. Good memory.
I just saw you scribbling in your notebook like the whole time, which was awesome. Catch us up on where you were then, where you are now, and what's going on with VKTRY Gear.
Yeah, 2022 was, I call it a reset year for us. So that was maybe 6 years into the company's existence. So we were, doing mid 7 figures. We had kind of been in this revenue ceiling, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. And we were, when I say reset, we were just kind of refiguring things out, knowing that we were living in a world where growing a business was not easy. Not that it ever was, right? But it wasn't, it was a different landscape than it was prior. And we just didn't have the messaging that was resonating with people, and we didn't just have the processes in place to scale. And so 2022, I met you in, I want to say it was like end of September.
September, yeah.
It was my first mastermind. It was my first time networking with people that were in my situation as a growth marketer, right, of a small brand. I'm like one of, at the time, again, like we had 6-7 people working full time at the business, right? So like really small business, and you're just trying to like wear every hat imaginable. And then you meet other people who are also trying to wear every hat imaginable, and they have amazing advice and they've seen success, and they are like super chill and just want to help and, throw ideas back and forth. So I took away some amazing insights from that mastermind. I know I shared them with you, Eric, but I've shared them with a lot of people, and it was an incredible few days, right? Where I'm like, oh wait, that's a great idea. Oh wait, that's a great idea. Came home, held like an all hands on deck meeting with agencies and internal members alike, and was like, here are some really great ideas. Apply them to our business. And then 2023 was this explosion for the brand, and I swear the mastermind played a huge part in that. And so that was I think 240% growth last year, so 3.5x revenue almost. And then this year we're close to being up 100% still. So
wow. And profitable.
Yep, absolutely.
And is that mainly from the top line just growing a lot more, just growing the top line and keeping the bottom line relatively similar, or keeping the costs relatively similar?
So first thing we actually did was in 2022, we just got cutthroat about our target CPA. And so we just weren't doing enough top line to cover our fixed expenses at the time. And the reason for the profitability really became, we stayed diligent on our cost per acquisition goal, and we're just able to, the organic presence we had made paid like just this demand capture device, and our CPAs dropped because of that. And so like Meta became way easier when there was demand being driven from things outside of it.
Back me up then. What were some of these key learnings that you took away from the mastermind? In case I didn't hear them, maybe I was sleeping. I don't know. No, I was on stage all the time, so I probably would have heard them.
Right. Yeah, you were on. You were working the
room.
The event. Yeah, exactly. I'd say the biggest impact came from we'll see him again, and I've seen him. I've talked to him a couple times since, and Tony Yu from Vessi, and I know I've talked to you about Tony too and the impact he had. my understanding of e-commerce, right? He kind of was just like, look, you gotta be everywhere for a certain group of people. And being everywhere can mean something different for everybody. But for us, it meant focusing in on one sport instead of all these sports. So for everyone's knowledge, we are a sports insole company, so footwear for athletes. It's carbon fiber, and it's springy, right? So like if I had it in my hand, I could slap it against my forearm because it's designed to return energy that's put into it. And so we knew we had an insole that was for like every athlete. Anyone that's wearing footwear can wear our insoles. We make insoles for soccer players, basketball players, football players, tennis players, runners, you name it. But the problem is people don't identify as athletes. People identify as, a soccer player or a striker or a goalkeeper. And so saying like, hey, athletes, I'm not, we've realized it doesn't click with people. So like, let's just use soccer as an example. If I'm a soccer player and I see just a meta ad for an insole, 9 times out of 10, it's not enough, right? And people wonder why, like, hey, how come my ad account isn't driving demand to the scale that I want it to? It's because Meta can only do so much demand generation, but it can do infinite demand capture. Demand generation needs to come from other things. So again, using that soccer example, if I have an influencer that's talking about how this insole solved their shin splints, and then I have a big YouTube review talking about how awesome these are for shin splints. Again, I'm just using shin splints as an example. The insole does a bunch of things, and then I have organic social media where I am a soccer, player talking about how great these insoles are. Again, so now those are 3 touch points that aren't my meta ad account, right? And so now there's awareness, there's education, there's probably some demand. Throw in some Advantage Plus campaign that's targeting soccer players. Now that's a formula that's going to work much better than just hoping a meta ad account is going to get the job done. So being everywhere meant, where is your consumer? Where are they consuming, right? Consumer consuming. Where is your consumer consuming media or information? And how can I be there correctly? How, the messaging, of course, is important. Presentation and brand and all that is important. But sometimes just being there in those touch points with the right messaging is going to do way more for you than just being in a meta ad account.
And narrowing to, even in the meta ad account, calling out athletes versus calling out a striker in soccer, it's going to be so much more powerful because that's how meta works now. You said, and so even with meta, you're going to capture that demand better when you get the exact person, when you're not just saying athlete, when you're maybe not even just saying soccer, you're calling out who that person is and the problem that it solved. It's like personalizes it, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And that's where we saw success, right? It was with actually basketball players. And I know we talked about this last year, but for anyone who hadn't listened to the podcast last year, we went and said, like, where can we win? Where can we speak to athletes in a way that they care? And it was talking to basketball players who want to dunk and saying, jump higher, dunk, like, here's how you dunk, and so turning from an insole brand for athletes to the insole for people who want to dunk was this massive unlock, because now people who wanted to dunk, we had their attention no matter what. That got the product in the hands of basketball players. It sped up our algorithms, right? So now like football players or volleyball players are like, why are so many basketball players buying these insoles, right? Like word of mouth just accelerated. Organic social presence accelerated because, again, we this one small group cared so much about this content that other social groups, I call them social groups, started to care. And so like, right, we hammered home basketball content and football sales doubled. Volleyball sales tripled. And so it's the high tides raise all ships.
Yeah, and it's a pull, not a push, right? You're not pushing all of this to everyone. You're going deep with basketball players,
yes.
And that's pulling people over rather than you. They're the ones looking over and being like, "What are these? How are these guys jumping higher?"
Absolutely, and
that's
then
neat.
It siloed our business, right? So like, this is our basketball avatar. We understand this consumer. Let's go learn this consumer, and let's go do the same thing. And we kind of, and I always try to think about, like, if I'm a skincare brand, how do I do that, right? Or if I'm a clothing brand, how do I do that? And it really is, I truly believe marketing in 2024 is just narrowing down who you're speaking to and speaking to them really well.
And everywhere, as you say, from multiple touch points.
Yeah. The way I've phrased it in the past is be everywhere, but not for everyone.
Yeah. Be everywhere for your target. So talk a little bit, like, I love that strategy of, the supporting organic materials. And that was basically, that was the strategy going into it. You're like, okay, we're going to go deep on this sport. And in doing that, we're going to also ink all these, partnerships, essentially. Talk about that process of finding those partnerships.
Yeah. The first thing was just like consuming the content of a high school, college level basketball player. So my For You page was basketball. I was liking, interacting with posts that again, like, I'm picturing myself as like 17, 18-year-old male basketball player, because that's where a bulk of our sales were coming from. I started getting fed what influencers they would be watching. I'd start getting fed what entities they were into that VKTRY could partner with. And, the first thing, we spent like $2,000 in basketball influencers November 2022. Fast forward, even like less than a year later, there were months we were spending six figures in basketball partnerships, because we were able to speak to this group, right, in a way that they hadn't been spoken to before, with people that they cared about, right? And so that was the reaction we saw, was this is working, and we're hitting a market that's never been spoken to in this way. So that was such an accelerant, right? And that's why we knew influencers was such a good way to get there.
Are you following, this is random, but are you following the 31-year-old dad who's trying to make the NBA on TikTok? He's
yeah.
Do you know who that guy is? I'm just
yes,
watching him catch and shoot all day. I'm like, how is this guy not in the show yet? He's got to be the ultimate influencer.
He's unbelievable. Yeah, we haven't reached out to him, but we do think that there's like a big market there, right? Like, I'm 28, and I love the insoles because, like, it helps with my knee pain, and so there's probably a million other people like that, and like that guy, right? I mean, we have different needs than a 17-year-old trying to go to college, but
yeah,
all the same, there's still application there.
Super cool. I gotta say, what I'm maybe most excited about for this whole mastermind is for you to meet up with the Next Round guys. Do you know Next? They might even not like me mentioning their brand on the podcast, but they're another brand with no vowels. So it's NEXT-RND. And they're these three guys from Montreal in their 20s. When I met them, they were like 21 or 22. And they're coming out, all three brothers are coming out to the mastermind this year. And they are just blowing up with the football accoutrement space. So they create shivers and visors and different kinds of like things that aren't the main pads, but are the ways that people kind of differentiate themselves on the field. And they've done it. You guys, you have such similar businesses with your lack of vowels and your deep connection to professional sports. It's so cool.
I've heard of this brand before, so I'm excited to meet them.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can exchange notes. You know, plenty to learn.
If you're a sporting brand out there, you pretty much have to. If you're in this vertical, just think of the brain power that's going to be in the room. So cool. What else? Give me something else that has sort of changed in the business, like that has been really beneficial.
We've learned that I consume so much DTC media. Between this podcast, other podcasts, and Twitter alone, and LinkedIn, you're just living. And I know you're in the same boat as me. Like, you're living and breathing just DTC media,
insights.
Right? Yeah. And it's so overwhelming.
Yep.
It's awesome, right? And there's so many I still try to put myself in the shoes of when we were, again, a much smaller business trying to get off the ground. And I'm I don't even know where I would look. And it's funny because brands always talk about, and people always talk about what got them their first big win. No one talks about once you get to your first big win, no one talks about what's kept them there or what helps them grow from there. It's everyone's just looking for their first springboard. But what I'm learning this year is So you get your first win, right? So like, let's say I'm now a operator. And again, like I'm just trying to like think about what your listeners would care about. And it's like, you get your first win. I feel like no one talks about what needs to happen from there and the scrappiness of like sustaining your first win and making it turn into like a viable business, right? Because like influencers and like this swarm only got us so far. And of course, like duplicating across other silos was important, but then like the messaging evolution. I think one thing that's really helped us become like a machine and again, just a really sustainable business that like you take a lot of pride in, because now you're not just like scrambling for a win. You have sustainability. So we hit this market hard. Let's just again take basketball players for an example. We hit this market hard, did 1.5 billion social impressions last year. Okay. We can't just go and start saying the same stuff over again, because there's awareness now. There's people that understand your product. So the biggest takeaway, I think that anyone can walk away from after like you've hit a market hard, right? So like my first insight to anybody listening to this is like, understand your consumer, have efficient reach to that audience, and get the messaging right. And that's Formula One for success. From there, and this is what I was getting at, I know I'm taking a while to get to my point, but from there, look at how many people in this demographic or in this social group know who you are, know you exist. 2, use post-purchase surveys or any sort of like we use Suzy. It's like a database that you can like do surveys on. Understand what they think about your brand. Like, what are the barriers to purchase? What do they like? What do they not like? And then 3, take the messaging that got you there in the first place and now evolve it. So like we've now taken this, and again, in 2024, we grew 240% in 2023, 1.5 billion impressions. People loved us because of the virality of the product. Guess what? Virality is a flash in the pan.
Like your first video, your first spring video, right? Through the uprights.
Yeah.
That was your first win in a way, right?
Between all platforms and all iterations, over 100 million views on that one video. So now people know we have a springy insole. It flips high. A concern could be fitment. A concern could be, does it really work? A concern could be your return policy, your price. We've now taken all these concerns. We now know we have high double-digit awareness, especially in certain high school sports. And now we can't just be like saying the same stuff we were saying a year ago. And so now we're talking about, we've taken the emotional side, which got us here. So emotion being like talking about, our founder's story. Like, my dad invented this insole. My parents started this company. Like, they've put their whole life into this. I've told that story 9 different ways and people have loved it, but I can't just keep telling it, right? Now it's, here's how we're developing new things. Here's how we're making an impact in youth sports. Here's how we're coming out with new products. We just became the official insole of Team USA Volleyball.
Nice.
Right? And it's like, wow, like there's impact beyond virality. And I think that's another post like TikTok, like boom, Instagram boom. I think that, because I keep tabs on like any brand I consider to be like viral, because I'm just like an organic social nerd. Like I just trying to study like the Scrub Daddies of the world and the Duolingos and those. And I think iteration on initial messaging is something that I don't see a lot of brands nailing home. And we're still learning about it too. But now we're like evolving our messaging into like impact and practicality and innovation rather than just like virality that got us here. So I think that's the tree I'm barking up here. I know it took me a while to get there, but
I think that's super. It's funny because it like when you first started, it sounded like Tony so much, talking about like owning the rain in Vancouver and how like 1 and 2 and 10 people owns a pair of Vessies like on the West Coast here.
Right.
And I've checked that every time I go on a ferry or something. I scan around and I'm counting the Vessies. But also how your messaging has to evolve and grow. I think that's such an interesting point. It's a living thing, just like every part of the business. And it's like anyone going down the rabbit hole on your product will find your founder's story. They'll find these other things, but it's kind of like what you surface as what's important to the brand now for what you want to be.
Totally. And it's like, I think people see the content and whatever else you're putting out there, and they were like, oh, it's become like, a venture capital backed like machine that's just like putting things out. But it's like, no, like it's still like my dad just walked in and out of this building. Like it's still small. It's still like, and we're still so passionate about what we're putting out there and how we're doing things. It wasn't like we were just trying to get rich quick. And I think if you're a brand operator, if you haven't told your story yet, tell your damn story, because people buy from people. They don't buy from brands, right? It's just so important to use organic social beyond just how pretty your product looks or, like how people react to your product. It's so important to talk about how you got there and where you're going. And I think that's, again, it gets swept under the rug often in the DTC media world.
Totally badass. I just saw, it's funny, I keep thinking of Brock from Frost Buddy. He just came on the podcast. All of his whole like meta ad pipeline is just him talking about his product, telling his founder's story on TikTok. Whatever goes viral or works, they put over to Meta. Just like really simple, but it's all him. It's him on the beach. And I'm really interested to hear what he has to say about this concept of evolving the message, because they want to become a Yeti. They want to become a much bigger company than just a cooler company. I just saw a really great tweet from him. It's going to lead me to a question. Drew, are you rich?
No.
I just saw this fun tweet from Drew from Brock that was like, his whole mindset has changed. He used to always equivocate, and I don't know everyone's personal situation, but he now says, yes, I'm rich, like with his business, with his life. And he feels like it's just this switch that's flipped to being more of an abundance mindset. And I'm always interested when people experience like, the growth that you experienced at VKTRY Gear, or like there's got to be financial upside for you. And we almost never talk about it in this space. Sure. We always talk about our businesses and stuff, but I'm always interested in the way that kind of success has like impacted your actual lifestyle. Or are you still just nose to the grindstone, founders, wages?
Totally.
Like,
Totally. And everyone's business is set up so differently, and like their goals are so different from each other. And, like if you want to pull your EBITDA or at the end of the year, you just want to count your money up and say, I'll pull this out of the business and reinvest this much out, right? Like you can do that. And that's an amazing position to be in. Whereas like our business, where we understand we're talking about personal, right? Like situations. So like I understand, like I'm in a mindset still, and for better or for worse, and maybe I should talk to someone about this, but like it still feels like there's two bad decisions away from disappearing. And that's probably not true.
Yeah.
It's probably not true.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, how the hell did I get here, right? And like, do I deserve to be here? I think I still have, and I know I've read a lot into this, like imposter syndrome is very frequent in this business.
Totally.
And so I almost feel like I got lucky, and it's like, who am I to like take my foot off the pedal and act like I've made it, right? Like, and again, like it's a very fortunate situation to be in, but I'm still like, the job's not done.
Yeah.
And that's just where my mindset's been. And I know other people here are the same way. And we're just trying to like make sure this continues to grow, and we're all like not, I just can't imagine like buying that dream house and then all of a sudden like, your insoles are like banned in some country. It's just like, it just always feels like you're on edge. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
Right. But like, again, like we're doing incredible amounts of revenue and EBITDA per month. And it's certainly like awesome to see. And then you just look ahead and you go, all right, next month, like time to go, and it's not like I've stopped to smell the flowers yet.
And if you did, you'd probably hate it. You love what you do so much. You're so engaged. If you were to be offered like an ungodly amount of money for the biz, you might be tempted to take it. You might, and at some point you might probably will. But I always wonder what's on the other side of that for founders who've,
totally,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
There's probably some postpartum there.
And again, I think upon an event like that, if it were ever to happen, I feel like that would be an inflection point where, okay, time to smell the roses. But I've also heard from other founders where they're like, nothing changed. And I'm not surprised to hear that. We're not in that situation. It's not like I've made it. It's not like I think it's so in comparison is probably something I should work on. But you constantly compare yourself to the guy or girl ahead of you.
Oh, you do. And I've met a friend who's a multi 10-figure millionaire, and he knows 100 millionaires who are desperate to get to that next level. Like it doesn't really end. And so that's why I think I advocate like Brock that we should just be like, yes, I'm rich. Sure, I'm rich.
100%. And it's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. But it's also, and it could have been the cheesy answer, right? Of like, I'm rich in friends and family and this and that. And like, I'm not here to share like I have an amazing family. I have an amazing fiance. I love where I live. Like I love that part of my life. And I think in DTC, or at least in entrepreneurship, you do kind of marry your life outside of work with your life inside work. But I still don't look at them as one and the same yet, because I'm like, no, I'm perfectly happy in my life outside of work, but I'm still in this office, like trying to figure out what the hell is going to happen next, most of the day.
Very cool. I know our event is about a month away here, and I'm sure a lot of what you're going to talk about is kind of distilling what we've talked about on this podcast a little bit, but like, what do you have in mind for what you're going to talk about at C-Suite?
Yeah, I think it's going to be much more tactical than what I'm talking about here. Like I'll get into organic social growth and like that initial virality. Also some influencer tactics and how we augmented organic and paid with influencers. Messaging evolution, 100%. How we looked at our initial messaging to find product market fit, and then how we evolved that, and then also how we templatized product market fit in this demo, and then messaging evolution with these influencers in this demo. Take it, bring it to the next demo, and so on and so forth. So it'll be much more nerdy and tactical, but it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm excited, and I hopefully can make an impact on someone like the crew over at
next round
in the 2022 DTC.
Yeah, they can like this is one of my proudest moments as an event promoter, is that you buy a ticket to our event, and then 2 years later you're speaking at the event. Is such a cool story, and
for real. Again, like you just don't believe it. You just don't like. Yeah. Again, what was that? 20 months ago, I was sitting in that seat trying to figure out what was going on, and now you're in this position, and you still can't believe it's real.
And because you don't look down, and I think that you just kind of keep running, and you don't look down for fear that it could all fall apart. Like we're 4 years in on D2C now, and I have the same worries. I've just been trying to, like, I've got a vacation, I got a 10-day family vacation coming up next week, and I've got all these things going on in my head, and I'm just being like, it's a good business. It's going well. I can just relax a little bit. I can have a fun time. Like really just reconceptualizing that it's going well and it's fun.
Isn't
lucky
that funny?
To be here.
Yeah, because you're like, you've seen everything that's gone into growing it. And it's like, from the outside, I look at DTC and I'm like, yeah, like media powerhouse, like crushing it. But you're like, but what about this? And like, and so it's certainly something, again, like certain positions in DTC should probably come with a therapist, because you should like really diagnose why you're feeling that way.
Or just come to masterminds. And then you realize that you can just be codependent with all the other people who are like you, who are grinding away, and you get reinforcement. It's electric when you get around all these like-minded people. You get them out on a boat. We're going out on a bigger boat this year. We're gonna actually see some whales. But no, I can't wait. And doing it in Victoria is such a fun thing for me to be able to bring everyone out there. I know it's a pain in the butt with the flights a little bit, but like it's worth it.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful there. I love going there. And it is a powerful moment. Like the first time I brought up, I did that hot seat, and I just complained for like an hour, and like seeing people like hearing my complaints and being like, here's a solution, and you're like, that feels good, because you're like, you've just been living in your own head with these problems for so long, or with your team, right? Like you're all just trying to take on these problems, when as someone like from the outside looking in who's been there before is just like, here's a simple solution. You're like, that is a simple solution.
Nice, man. Well, I can't wait to hang out again. Thanks so much for this, and we'll see you in about a month.
Awesome. Can't wait. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.